Welcome to the Busy Signal. My name is Jim, and this is my retrostalgic 80s, 90s, and early 2000s podcast. This show aims to salute all the stuff from back in the day that is now extinct or quickly going that way. The Busy Signal, episode 36. I'm Jim. Thanks for tuning in. How's it going, everyone? Here on the Busy Signal, we love technology, state-of-the-art, cutting-edge retro technology. And if this is your first time tuning in, and you love retro tech from the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, you are in luck. Because we have a tech episode dedicated to each one of those decades in our ever-growing back catalog for everyone to enjoy at any time, for free, anywhere you get your pods. So as you can tell by the title, this episode is not a high-tech episode. It is low-tech. We are talking low-tech today. The gadgets that helped us get things done back in the day without Wi-Fi, without any apps, and sometimes without electricity. The tech from our childhood that was already aged and pretty much on its last legs. Because, believe it or not, we used to get things done without these things. We used to get things done without apps. We didn't need the internet. We were sufficient. We were able to get things done the old school analog way. So that's what we're doing. No tech, low tech, all the gadgets that pretty much have gone the way of the dinosaur at this point. And let's see how many you remember. First up, I'm throwing it way back. Like, it's not even low tech. This is no tech. And I remember these things being used when I was a kid in the 80s and maybe a little bit in the 90s, but really, they're completely obsolete now. Like, they sell them. You can still buy them. I don't know why, but the rolling index. It was invented in 1956 by a Danish engineer, and it was a wheel of small alphabetized file cards that would hold all of your contacts' information. And it was easy to flip through, it was quick to find your contacts, and boom, before you know it, you were picking up the phone and making a call. I mostly noticed it on TV, or like if I went to a place where it was a business, there was usually a Rolodex on the desk. And when nobody was looking, it was really fun to flip through. But like I mentioned, I remember them back in the 80s, and they pretty much at that point were quickly disappearing. By the 90s brought in electric organizers and the early PDAs.
While they're reading about yesterday, the boss from Casio gives you a powerful start on today. Its 64K memory lets you see where you're going. You can see who you're calling. This digital diary lets you see who you're meeting. And the boss can even exchange data with a PC. It's got everything you need to make your day a better day. The Business Organizer Scheduling System. The boss from Casio.
And the 2000s pretty much finished it off with, obviously, the mobile phone. Our phones became the Rolodex. All of our contacts were in our phone. Which is why we can't remember phone numbers these days, because we don't ever look at them. We just click on someone's name and it's calling. This one is really extinct, pretty much. Like, even though I said you can still buy them, for example, there are Rolodexes, or at least a Rolodex that can be found as an exhibit currently in the Smithsonian. The Rolodex has been reduced from a freestanding functional device to a mobile phone function. Do you remember Rolodexes? Did your parents have one? Do you still have one? Are you still using a Rolodex? That's pretty cool if you are. Maybe I'll pick one up. This next one sounds like I'm breaking the rules, but I promise I'm not. The way we do TV today is not the way we did it in the 80s and 90s. When I was real little in the mid-80s, TVs were considered pretty much furniture sometimes. They were housed in big solid wood cabinets with big dials and antennas. And you'd put doilies on top and knickknacks. Like, they were completely wooden. You needed 2 or 3 people to move this large piece of furniture. By the late 80s and early 90s, TVs had pretty much completely ditched the wooden aspect. But still were pretty clunky, especially if you wanted a bigger TV. And that's because of the CRT, the cathode ray tube. And that was the screen. And it actually had to warm up, not like it did back in like the 50s and 60s, but it still had to warm up and cool down. And if you got close to that TV while it was on, you could feel the static. You could feel the hairs on your arms kind of going towards the screen. Sometimes you'd get a static shock, though. I remember being completely floored by the late 90s, seeing actual flat screen TVs.
Once people dreamed of owning that fabulous new invention called a TV. Then they dreamed of having a set that could actually show pictures in color. Now there's a dream for today's generation.
Introducing Flat TV from Philips. A 42-inch screen that's incredibly only 4 1/2 inches thick. And like the other dreams, someday it too will be in everyone's living room.
They still were CRT, but they were flat. And yeah, of course, by the mid-2000s, flat screens were the complete standard, and we had ditched the CRT and we put in the LED or plasma screens. And then we had the whole plasma versus LED war, which of course, LEDs won. So within like 20 to 25 years, the whole shape of the TV completely changed. The other way we do TV differently is the signals. When I grew up, it was UHF and VHF signals. And you had 2 different dials for each signal. And because it was over-the-air TV, you were only getting local channels. Like cable was a thing, obviously, and it gained a lot of popularity in the 1980s, but we were still able to use the over-the-air signals for local TV. You didn't have to pay for local TV. That is until 2009. You still don't have to pay for local channels. You can get through HD signals, but I'm sorry, where I live, HD signals are just terrible. So you either need satellite or you need cable. But I remember seeing signs at like Circuit City or The Wiz or Best Buy reminding everybody that analog TV broadcasting would stop June 12th, 2009. That's when the HD signals were going to take over.
Well, we are just a week away, if you can believe that, from the switch to all digital television. The transition date is next Friday. That's June 12th. You will need a converter box or a new TV, a subscription to cable or satellite TV to keep getting a picture.
So everybody was now forced to figure out how to either make their current TV accept the digital signal, or you were just going out and buying a new TV. Unless you didn't care and you were already using cable and it didn't matter. So now we no longer needed the bunny ear antennas. So like I said at the beginning of this segment, the TV of today is nothing like the TV back in the day at all. You certainly can't hook up your old Nintendo and play Duck Hunt with a modern TV. The Zapper, it doesn't work with flat screen LED TVs. You need that old CRT. Keep that in mind if you're feeling nostalgic and want to hook up your old Nintendo and play some Duck Hunt. It may not work. I'll be the first to tell you that of all school subjects, math has always been my weakest. I got by in math, but math is hard. And you always had to show your work in math class, even if the teacher let you use a calculator. You had to show your work. And then we'd say, but we're using calculators. You know it's right. And then the teacher would turn around, and the air would get thin. The temperature in the room would drop by about 5 degrees. And that canned response that all teachers had sitting in their back pocket would echo through the room.
Well, you're not always going to have a calculator with you to help.
We see how that turned out, didn't we? Every smartphone has a calculator. Search engines serve as a calculator. And if we take a look back, humanity has been working on always having a calculator with us for decades, maybe even longer. Think about it. The abacus was portable. The first solid-state electronic calculator was produced in the 1960s. Solid-state meaning it used a semiconductor. It was a small computer, technically. And then technological advancements shrunk it down to pocket-sized, and by the 1980s, the price to buy an electronic calculator was really affordable. It was cheap, pretty much. And it could be as small as a credit card. Prior to smartphones, this was the sign that people wanted to have calculators with them always. And they could, but the boldest of calculatory statements was the watch calculator. Invented in the 1970s, but perfected and affordable for the 1980s. Most popular was the Casio and the Timex models, and I'm pretty sure my dad had a Timex.
Bird cards for Casio. Would you rather have a calculator or a watch? With a Casio calculator watch, you have both, and it works with one finger. What's the world's most revolutionary watch? The Casio Melody Alarm. 12 melodies, including Jingle Bells and Happy Birthday. What is digital?
Digital is Casio!
Once again, flying in the face of math teachers everywhere. The human race's determination to have constant access to a calculator knows no bounds. And by the time we get to the 1980s, calculators were being included in all sorts of gadgets, PDAs, mobile phones, even dedicated calculator programs on computer operating systems. And at this point, there's really very little need for a standalone basic electronic calculator. So I'm in my early 40s, and as a child, I remember that in stores, any stores, when you would check out at the register, aside from the cash register, there was also another gadget. I only know it as one name, but apparently it had several names. It could be called a zip-zap machine, a click-clack machine, or my favorite, a knuckle buster. I knew it simply as a credit card machine. And I get all the other names, zip-zap, click-clack. I can even see why it would be called a knuckle buster, but it wasn't a very big device, and if you paid for your purchase with a credit card, the cashier would take your card, put it face down in the machine, and carbon paper would fold over top of it, and the cashier would slide a bar back and forth over your card, leaving an imprint of your card on the carbon paper. One piece of carbon paper was given to you as a receipt, and the store would keep the other. And nowadays, like most things, credit card payments are 100% digital and can be taken over smartphones even. Welcome to the future. And like calculators, the idea of standalone alarm clocks seems to be a little dated. I mean, personally, I haven't even had an alarm clock, like a bedside standalone alarm clock, in almost 20 years. Gone are the days from the 1980s when we all had the same faux wooden paneled AM/FM alarm bricks that would be jump scaring us awake every morning. Gone even are the days of the 1990s with our neon or see-through pretentious modern alarm clocks set to our favorite FM stations to wake us up with whatever local morning zoo was on. By the early to mid-2000s, most people had a mobile phone, and yes, these phones had calculators, and they had contact lists replacing your Rolodexes or your black books. And yes, they had Snake, which provided hours of time-wasting fun, but my point is that they had an alarm function. And over the last 20 plus years, the demand for alarm clocks, it's starting to dip, but alarm clocks are not dead yet. You can still buy alarm clocks in a myriad of shapes and sizes and styles with all sorts of USB hookups, and there are several reasons for this. One is that if you grew up using a standalone bedside alarm clock, you probably still feel comfortable using it. You just like it. And another explanation may be that some people want an alarm clock for like the other side of your room. You want to be woken up from across the room. You have to get up and go physically turn off the alarm clock so that you actually get out of bed. But you also want to keep your phone by you for whatever reason. So the alarm clock is fighting extinction, but the writing's on the wall. Cell phones have killed off lesser tech, so it's probably just only a matter of time. It seems hard to believe, but we actually survived and thrived in a low-tech analog world. Modern tech is cool and all, but for all the speed and convenience it provides, it comes with its own serious set of issues. Like really serious issues, like computers crashing, paper jams, ID theft, spam, Y2K bugs, and so on. I mean, back in the day, nobody ever had their banking information stolen because somebody hacked their rotary phone. Didn't happen. Were there any low-tech or no-tech gadgets that you think I left out? You know, something that should have been included in this episode? Because this was only like 5 or 6 things. So if you've got something, hit me up on Instagram at BusySignalCast. This is a topic I'll probably revisit at some point, so I'll gladly give you a shout out if you come up with something I overlooked. And speaking of Instagram, while you're at BusySignalCast, go ahead and slap that follow button for your daily shot of nostalgia. Because in addition to all the show content, the last 2 weeks alone have been dedicated to either 90s internet service commercials or classic Super Bowl commercials. I'd like to also mention that you can go back in the show's archives and check out episode 9, Super Bowl commercials, where myself and friend of the show Corey remember our favorite Super Bowl commercials. And after you're done listening to this episode or the Super Goals commercial episode, you can hit the subscribe button on Apple or Spotify. You won't be sorry, I guarantee it, or your money back. And if you did like this episode, leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify and a positive review. I'll read all positive reviews and comments on a future episode. Just like I'm about to do for Lemon Sugar -some numbers, who commented on the public service announcements episode number 17 on YouTube, and they write, "It's like a time capsule." Thanks, Lemon Sugar. That episode really brought back some memories for me too, so be on the lookout for another PSA's episode at some point, probably this year. I'd say that's a certified cool comment, and that is all of our time for this episode. So thanks for hanging out. Catch you later. Once again, I'd like to say thanks for listening. And as always, you can listen to The Busy Signal everywhere quality podcasts are streamed. Hit the subscribe button to have a new episode delivered directly to your favorite device every other Friday. If you really like the show, leave a 5-star rating or a positive review on Apple and Spotify. That lets everybody else know to come check out what you already think is awesome. You can also head over to Instagram and follow the show at Busy Signalcast for even more retrostalgic content. I share a good amount of fun stuff that isn't mentioned on the episodes. While you're there, say hi in the comments. Don't be shy. And until next time, remember, reach out and touch the past.